one of the biggest questions that I get as a childbirth educator and hypnobirthing instructor is what can I do to prepare for a positive and empowering birth experience? So I've created this two-part series where I'm going to give you my top tips on what you can do to prepare for a positive and empowering birth. If you haven't already, make sure and hit that little subscribe button down below and hit the notification bell if you don't want to miss any more of my future videos. Let's get into the tips. So my tip number one when it comes to preparing for a positive and empowering birth experience is education. The primary motto that I have behind my courses and my teachings is education and knowledge means empowerment. And the more you know, the less you fear. So educating yourself around the topic of childbirth, around what the possible options are for you, what the various interventions that you might be offered, or the different routes that birth can take, and knowing that you have your plan A, B, and C can help you to feel more empowered and more excited and confident around how your birth experience might look. I always recommend my clients to take out of hospital independent antenatal education as opposed to the in-hospital scenario. Your option A, in hospital, teaches you how to birth under their circumstances, under their policies, under their procedures. And while hospital policies are certainly important in some cases, they don't necessarily always have the mother and baby's best interests at heart. So you are going to be taught with this certain model. You kind of have the second option, which then is private antenatal education, which is education such as hypnobirthing, gentle birth education, or private antenatal educators or childbirth educators who are going to teach you how to give birth in a way that has you at the core focus of that education. So you're going to learn about the different ways that you can give birth, the anatomy of childbirth, and about the different sort of coping mechanisms and comfort measures that you can use as sort of tools in your toolkit when it comes to birthing your baby. If you are interested in learning a little bit more about having a gentle and empowering birth experience, but you want to do it from the comfort of your own home, make sure and click that little link down below for my very own e-course, which is being launched very soon and something that you might want to have a little look at. My tip number two is on that same note of moving away from that place of fear and more towards a place of confidence. And that means our building of a birth team. That doesn't necessarily have to be the people who are going to help us feel supported and confident, although it certainly can include finding a care provider who makes you feel supported, understood, and heard. Finding a doula who might be able to help you through those phases of labour and help you with comfort measures and help you and your partner to feel supported and understood. It might also be things, so people and things. Thinking about how you might want that perfect birth bowl or how you want to have candles and fairy lights set up in your space. Check out my previous video on the birthing environment and things that you can do to create that sense of privacy and sense of well-being during your birth. Things like that can be really, really powerful when it comes to the experience overall. Again, coming back to the topic of preparing ourselves for birth, I always encourage my clients to look into some form of mental preparation for birth. Birth is so much a mental challenge, a mental game, and while we might think about all of the hands-on techniques that we can use, one of the big things that we have to remember is to train your brain for birth. Our brain is a muscle just the same as any other, and in fact during pregnancy we have that amazing ability where we have an increased what we call neuroplasticity, which means we have an increased ability to train our subconscious mind, which is that left side of our brain which really kicks in during birth. So the more that we can remind our body of our abilities to birth our baby and remind ourselves of that sort of strength that we have within, the more likely we are to experience that sensation of confidence and empowerment when our birth actually kicks off. So looking into things like gentle birth or hypnobirthing can be really powerful. Again, without plugging myself too much, make sure and check out my e-course down below for more hypnobirthing resources. So my fourth tip then is to surround yourself with positivity. And that means positive birth stories. So it might mean reading positive birth stories, listening to positive birth podcasts, watching positive birth videos on YouTube. There are so many wonderful, rich resources that we have available to us nowadays. But that also comes into your day-to-day life. You may have noticed that as you are pregnant, everybody wants to tell you their story. And quite often, it takes up to 10 positive comments to make up for one negative one. So if you have Nancy down the road who was dead set on sharing her really traumatic birth story with you, figure out ways that you can learn to pop her on pause and just to remind her that you are doing everything that you can in your power to prepare for a positive birth experience, and that while you would love to listen to her story, perhaps it would be better to wait until you have experienced your own birth so that you can sit down over a cup of tea and listen and share in a more empathetic way. And my last tip for this particular video is about knowing your why. So if you are planning for a natural intervention-free birth, coming back to a really deep and poignant part of your why is really important. The chances are that you're not going to be able to remember the facts and figures. So having a deep, meaningful reason as to why you're striving for this particular type of birth is what you're going to remember when it actually comes to meeting your baby. Whether that is you really want to have that experience similar to your own mother or your mother-in-law has, or whether that's you have had a previous negative experience and you want to have something different this time. Make the more deep and meaningful that reason is, the reason that your why is the more reason that you're going to strive for that experience.